Hi everyone, and welcome to the next installment of the Endgame series. This time we're going to consider the concept of time, and when exactly it is or isn't necessary to hurry in the endgame. The saying, "do not hurry," is one of the best known mantras of the endgame, and it's certainly good advice, but it has to be used with caution, as it only applies in certain positions and not in others. The key to understanding this principle is the concept of sustainability of advantages. It was Steinitz who said that advantages can be either temporary or lasting, and the "do not hurry" principle of course applies only with a sustainable advantage. If your advantage at any stage of the game is temporary, then of course you must take action immediately to exploit it as much as possible. For example, if your opponent's pieces are lacking in coordination, it may only be a few moves before they are harmonious again. However, if you have a sustainable advantage in the endgame, then the principle of not hurrying is a powerful tool in the conversion of the advantage into a win. This is because it helps to wear down your opponent and his defenses. While the principle itself neither expands nor diminishes the advantages from an objective perspective, it certainly improves the winning chances from a practical viewpoint. Your opponent may get tired. It's exhausting to be under pressure for a long time, and when the decisive moment finally occurs, he's more likely to commit an error. The following game is a great example of the principle of not hurrying. It was played by Peter Lecko in his World Championship match against Vladimir Kramnik in 2004. Lecko had the white pieces and opened with d4, which is fairly unusual for him. He's generally an e4 player, and the opening transposed into a queen's gambit declined anyway after the sequence knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, and d5. And I'm going to skip forward anyway into the endgame without giving much attention to the game up until then. So it went as follows. D takes c5 here, which gives white a clear but a small edge after bishop takes c5. C takes d5, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, e takes d5, and a3, because white has inflicted an isolated d-pawn on black's camp, but black has free piece activity in compensation. So knight c6, bishop d3, and this continuation, and a6, because black doesn't want to see his knight driven from its good post here, and therefore prevents white from advancing with b5. However, this move permits a small combination that enables white to retain an edge. If you want to try and spot it, then stop the video now. Bishop takes a6 is the move, because after rook takes a6 comes b5, winning back the material. After rook takes a3, b takes c6, b takes c6, and rook takes c6, but we're still well within book lines at this stage. So rook a7, rook d6, rook d7, queen takes d5, winning a pawn, and now a lot of simplification. The rook takes d6, queen takes d6, queen takes d6, bishop takes d6, and bishop takes f3, which is voluntarily giving up the bishop pair for an alternative advantage in the form of doubled pawns for white, as well as an isolated h-pawn. And with this move, Kramnik is definitely playing for a draw. And with all the pawns on one side of the board, the bishop pair isn't so much of an advantage for this endgame anyway. And after the match, Lecko said that objectively this is a draw, but black needs to prove that there is no forced draw, and also no draw familiar to everyone as there might be in a rook endgame, because with bishops on the board it's already an unusual position. Well, not generally unusual, but compared to with just rooks and pawns and the kings. So g takes f3 anyway, of course, and now bishop d8, rook b1, bishop f6, and king g2, which incredibly was the first new move of the game. And with the endgame that's about to take place, black should be able to draw, and in any case his drawing chances are higher than white's winning chances despite the extra pawn. But in practical terms, things are less clear-cut. The position is certainly easier and less tiring to play for white, and as far as black is concerned, it's somewhat psychologically depressing to come directly from the opening into an ending where the best you can hope for is a draw through accurate defense. All of these factors are compounded by the principle of not hurrying. While white could immediately start advancing his pawns, it makes sense first to try and wear black down. Here Kramnik played g6, which is giving his king some breathing space and removing any back rank threats. He's not hurrying either. And now f4, king g7, and rook b7, penetrating to the 7th rank. Rook e6, rook d7, which is a careful and effective maneuvering from Liko, but ultimately he'll have to gain central terrain with e3 and e4. e4 and e5. As committal as it might be, he'll have to do it if he wants to break through. So rook e8, rook a7, rook e6, bishop c5, rook c6, and rook a5. It looks like shuffling around, but these rook maneuvers are helping white because there's no way for black to shake off the pressure on his position. So bishop c3, rook b5, rook a6, rook b3, bishop f6, and rook b8, which is threatening mates with bishop f8 check, followed up with bishop h6 discovered check from the rook, and it provokes the weakening move h5. And the reason this is a weakening move is because after white plays f5 and takes on g6, it would have been preferable to black to recapture with the h-pawn, as then white wouldn't obtain a passed e-pawn after f takes g6. And alternatively, black can recapture with his king on g6, but this leaves him with fragmented and weak pawn structure. So, through patient maneuvering, white has made some progress, although the position should still be drawn with perfect play. So rook b5, bishop c3, rook b3, bishop f6, and only now did Liko decide to take committal action with e4 and shifting the game up a gear at the 38th move, which is just before the time control, which forces Kramnik to make crucial decisions in one of the most critical phases of the game. So rook a5, bishop e3, rook a4, attacking e4, now e5. Playing instead king f3 allows black to simplify with bishop d4, resulting almost certainly in exchanges and an easily drawn rook ending. In order to maintain the pressure, white has to avoid such exchanges. So bishop e7, now rook b7, attacking the bishop, king f8, rook b8 check, and king g7. And Kramnik isn't being tempted to weaken his position, so Liko has to try something else. So played king f3, now came rook c4, king e2, rook a4, king d3, bishop h4, and bishop d4, which is taking aim at the black king and threatening e6 with check, which is white's best shot at creating winning chances in this position. And now came a succession of checks as follows. Now rook a4, pinning the bishop, so king d5, rook a5 check, king c6, rook a4, attacking the bishop, so king c5, bishop e7 check, king d5, rook a5, and the king returns to e4. And notice how Liko is not hurrying. He's created a significant edge for himself in the position now, and his king adventure to the queen side didn't bring any obvious dividends, but it hasn't harmed anything either. And in the meantime, the pressure remains on the black position. As white's advantage here is sustainable, there's no need to hurry. So rook a4, and Liko now took the time to get his rook off a dark square in case of a later bishop d6 after e6 has been played, which is going to fork the rook and the f4 pawn. So rook c8, now bishop h4, and Liko has placed his pieces as well as he can, and now, again not long before the time control, at move 56, he plays the critical move e6 check, which more or less forces bishop f6, and after e7 black is forced to give up the exchange, but due to white's scattered pawns, black should be able to hold for a draw if he's able to play f5 and keep his bishop on the long diagonal, and if that's achieved, then it's impossible for white to make any progress. But accuracy is required from black, which isn't easy when you've been down material for 30 moves over a time span of several hours, even if you're one of the best endgame players in the world, as Kramnik surely is. Okay, that's the end of part 1.